Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today I wanted to just jump into the topic of certain things that have changed in the dating slash family building dynamic from yesteryears to today that just don't function anymore the same way. It's just something that I was thinking about, and I just kind of wanted to have a little discussion with you guys and kind of put this out there. And I would love to hear you guys talk into the comments about what your thoughts are. But these are just three things. There are many things that can change, but these are just three things that was kind of in the air lately that I was talking about with some friends. So one thing that has changed from way back that is not the same now, that just it doesn't function the same way now, is courting in the dating world. Back in the days, if you had that dynamic of courting in your young 20s or even in your teens, and you stayed with somebody until you were like 80 years old, you were like grandparents' age. Nowadays versus today, where people are now, so many more people are now single into their 30s, into their 40s, that it's quote unquote expected for guys to court now in this phase, which doesn't make sense from a standpoint of, financially and where you should be at financially versus doing like the dating game of going from one to the next to the next. And all these things that I'm referring to really kind of come down to like a financial standpoint in terms of the differences between then and now. So it's more so that, even though it's relating to family building, whatever the case is. But yeah, so that's a thing where when you break it down, if a guy goes on a date, we'll say once a week, every week, and we'll say he even spends $100. Sometimes people spend way more than that. But let's say he spends $100 a week. Some people in big cities can end up spending like $200 a week because they go out Friday, Saturday night. But let's just say one day they spend $100. That times 52 weeks equals $5,200 for the year. Now, it may not seem like a whole lot, just upfront, but when you think about the fact that that could be put towards, like a 401k, some kind of investment plan, a Roth, or whatever the case is. And we spoke about stuff like that on the channel before. And I definitely want to do another video breaking all those kind of things down again. But it goes to show that, and so like I said, that's kind of like the bare minimum. Some people spend more than that going out every weekend. That's probably the biggest consumer for people's money, is just the dating market. So with that being said, it financially doesn't make any sense. So that's one thing from back in the days that doesn't apply as much as it does now, because back in the days, most people got with someone, they stayed with them for many years to come, 30, 40, 50 years. You never had to do that again. And now you guys unionized your income, and it was no longer about just going outside and spending money. It was like budgeting together as a family, which brings us into our next point. One thing that back in the days was different that doesn't exist anymore is a family income versus the now 2-income household requirement. Back in the days, you had it where the man, usually it was always like pretty much the man, but had an income that supported a family. It supported like himself, the wife, multiple kids, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. And they were all able to be supported. They're all able to, sometimes even partake in extracurricular activities for the kids, sports or whatever the case is that they might play after school, sign up for. They would also have the ability to go on little trips or whatever the case is, even if it wasn't a whole bunch of trips or lavish trips. Everybody remembers back in the days, maybe you went on a little camping trip, maybe you went to Six Flags, maybe you went to, not everyone could go to Disney, but they had those little things. You go to little parks, you go to whatever the case is, you were able to do a couple things. Nowadays, one income will not support the family. 9 times out of 10 for most people, one income will not support the family. You require 2 incomes. So that is something that really kind of no longer exists anymore. And I've seen some things, a lot of things out there that speak on this topic, whether it's videos or written articles that talk about how by introducing women into the workspace, it allowed, the country, the government, whatever you want to call it, the times, to do away with the family income, because they said, well, if we got 2 people working, we're just going to lower income relative to the expenses of inflation and expenses of living. And now it's required to have a double income. So that is something that used to exist that no longer exists anymore and can't exist in today's time. And the last thing is the amount of children someone has. Where back in the days, people had like 5+ children. You'd have people saying they got 5 or 6 or 7 siblings, 8 siblings. Like you have people sometimes who had 10 kids and they can have that. We're now in an era where you kind of can really only afford 2 kids, sometimes only 1, because without having the resources, what's needed to actually support kids is a lot more than what people think. And it's not in terms of your basic buying food, this and that. That's not the part that's expensive when it comes to kids. Some people think kids are expensive. Kids are actually not expensive when it comes to just the basic needs. It's no different than when you have a pet animal. If anything, pets cost more than kids when it comes to feeding them and pretty much like sustaining them and, you know, medical bills and all this other stuff like that, because you're not going to have medical insurance for your dog. You're going to have medical insurance for your kid because you got to have medical insurance for yourself. So it's just a copay. You see some of these people bring their dog to the doctor's office. They're paying thousands of dollars because their dog doesn't have health insurance, which kind of makes me wonder, why is there no such thing as pet health insurance? Maybe there is, considering how many people put their animals on the level of family, which is a whole nother story. But anyway, generally speaking, a dog costs more than kids when it comes to basic survival stuff. Now, obviously, you're going to do some extra things with your kids. And even then, you go within your budget. And it doesn't have to be an arm and a leg when it comes to that stuff, because when you take away your own hangout life that you probably had before the kids and you incorporate that same money into doing group stuff with the kids, they're really not that expensive. So where you might have gone to a lounge, a club, or whatever the case is, or when you were in your 20s, cool. Now you and the kids go to a movie. That is probably about the same price as when you went to the lounge by yourself and bought a couple of drinks. Drinks are like $7 to $10 a drink. You buy yourself 3 or 4 drinks, you pretty much almost paid for like you and the kids going to the movies to a degree. You know what I mean? So where kids get expensive is college, and they get expensive when it comes to you trying to prepare them for the world, generational wealth, you building an empire for them. So you investing inside a home so you can pass down to them. You putting away into, some kind of account for your kids, whether it's some kind of savings account. So later on down the line, they can use for college, or they could just use for some kind of investment. These are the things where kids get expensive. And when you factor that in, it could end up costing you thousands and thousands of dollars per kid to have them ready to go into the real world. And this is important. We spoke about this on the channel before, about how this is important, because for every kid that you have that you send out into the world with, resources, with their own savings when they turn 18, maybe even structure it out where they get it at 18, they get it at 30, they get it at 35. But you structure it out where they get money from maybe a trust or whatever it is you set up, a savings, a trust, a checking account, whatever the case is, some kind of investment account. Plus you investing maybe in a home that, you guys can have the family home that they could stay at, where now if they need, while they're trying to get on their feet and they're working their career job while they're saving, they don't have to be worried about paying rent, this and that. We've gone into this kind of stuff before. I will try to go into this stuff again later on in another video about how you really should not be sending your kids out into the world at 18, like as if they're ready to go out there into the world. No, they're still pups. And that's not really the way you do it. But nonetheless, the point is, sending each kid should be going out into the world fully fleshed out with reserve money. It doesn't have to be in their hands, but it could be building in the background, because sometimes at a young age they shouldn't have that money in their hands anyway. But they should have money, investments, a plan for them to do better than you in every way without even having to do anything, let alone whatever they do now adds to that even more so. This has a double benefit too, because the more kids you send out into the world prepared, ready with financial investments, then when you turn the age you can't move around anymore, like 80, 90 years old, they're the ones who take care of you. And now they're taking care of you because you built an empire for them, to where you can just kind of sit back and they make sure you're good. Because at that point, it's not finances that you're going to need. You're going to need somebody physically to let you sit on their couch and watch TV all day, and knowing that if you need to maybe have a doctor's appointment, they're going to be the one to take you. So nowadays, people can afford maybe 1 or 2 children they could do that with, where back in the days, you could have like 5, 6, 7 children, and all of them were able to go to college if they needed to, or maybe they went to a trade school, but all of them also could have like, you know, maybe a bit of investment, a little bit of something for them later on down the line, some kind of little, you know, savings account to get them started. So when they turn to an adult, it's like, here you go. Maybe you got a little something, maybe it's not a lot, but it's like each kid could be like, here you go, $100,000. When you turn maybe 30 years old, you got $100,000 waiting for you. What do you want to do with that? You want to buy a home, whatever the case is, you can do it. And if you got like 5+ kids, like cool, you all got some, because, you know, on that family wage, a parent could have been like, I'm going to put away, not even just in general the family wage, but just in general the times and things costing less. A parent could have been like, I'm going to put away a little bit of money for each kid from the age of when they turn 1. So by the time they turn 30, that may be $50 a week that I put away for each kid can now be $100,000 30 years from now, because compound interest in time means you don't have to put a lot of money down. You just need to let time do its thing. Where now we're at a space where we can't even put $50 away for the kids on a weekly basis because we're just barely trying to survive. So these are 3 things that existed back in the days that don't exist now and can't exist now. What are your thoughts, you guys? Comment down below. And as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.